I want to practice solving equations with you at home. And the first vocabulary word is equation because it has an equal sign. So remember, I really have two algebraic expressions put together and I have an equal sign between them. And this looks like an algebraic expression over here, right? And then this over here is just a good old constant by itself, a number without a letter. You put those two things together, look, have an equal sign between it. It makes it an equation. A better example of seeing two algebraic expressions together, I'm looking. This worksheet here, algebraic expression, an equal sign between it, an equal sign between it. That's two expressions with an equal sign. I now have an equation. So now that you know what an equation is something you can solve. Algebraic expressions, this worksheet here, we didn't do any solving. We just simplified. And so now we're going to solve these equations and get an answer. And the answer is going to look like x equals something or m equals something. We are going to isolate the variable, meaning to get the variable by itself. Let me show you. To isolate the variable, to solve for v, to solve for the letter, to get the letter by itself, you need to do inverse operations. Now, when I say inverse operations, I mean the opposite. So I have a positive 8 that's added on this side. That means I need to do the inverse operation of adding, and because he's positive, I'm going to subtract him off to make him 0. So he is no longer over here with the v. I can now move him to where the 26 is by doing the same thing that I did here. So now I have isolated the variable v. It's by itself. So now I do 26 minus 8 and I get 18. The variable is isolated. I have solved the problem. And number 2, let's just practice. I want to get the letter isolated by itself. So to isolate the variable, I need to do the inverse operation of whatever's around it, and we want to make sure we always add or subtract first. So I have to do the opposite of negative 9, which means to add 9. So m equals 4. Alright, let's move on. And we just want to practice. Isolate this variable means I need to move everything else. And so I'm going to actually box the plus sign 2, because when the 3 leaves by subtracting it because he's positive, I have to do the opposite of that. I'm left with a positive p, so I don't have to write the plus sign anymore. 8 minus 3 is 5. The variable is isolated. Okay, here is my p. I need to isolate it. How do I isolate it? Get rid of this. How do I get rid of it? Do the inverse operation. So instead of minus 6, I'm going to add 6. It's gone. That's what I want to happen. It needs to leave so this can be isolated. Add negative 5 plus 6, just in case you're tripping about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cancel, 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 cancel. I have 1 plus sign left. Okay, moving on. How do you isolate the variable here? So we divide by 8. Now, why do we divide by 8? Well, if you noticed up here, when I'm adding and subtracting, the inverse operation of adding is subtracting. The inverse operation of subtracting is adding. So that means the inverse operation of multiplying is going to be to divide. And the inverse operation of dividing is going to be multiplying. So how did I know that was multiplying? Whenever you see a number next to a letter, that's multiplication. If you think about it, it kind of reminds you of slope, doesn't it? Because when we have an equation like this, the slope is the number in front of x. And that's multiplied. Remember, input, output, put a number in here, multiply to that, add it to 5, and out came the y. Same difference. This is multiplication. So the inverse operation of multiplication is division. So I divide. All right, now we need to do negative 104 divided by 8. And if you need to use the calculator, then you can. We're not being partial. Control divide. If you can do this by hand, kudos to you. Negative 13. Okay, so now it's this one. Multiply, that's multiplication. So I'm going to divide, because I have to do the inverse. Divide. Cancel, cancel. That becomes a 1. So this is really 1. How do I know that? 14 divided by 14 is 1. Control divide. 14 divided by 14 is 1. So it's not 0, it's 1. So B equals negative 56 divided by 14, which is negative 4. Now let's do this one. Well, my letter is here, and I want to isolate him. So how do I do that? To isolate this, you are going to multiply, because that's divided. Remember, fractions are division problems. So you're going to multiply by 18. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now, what does that do? Because this is really 18 over 1. And so if you multiply across, that's 18 at the top and 18 at the bottom. And what is 18 divided by 18? It's 1. And that's what we want. So to get the denominator to go away, you're going to multiply by it. And it makes it become 1. So now B is isolated. So how do you solve this? 18 times negative 6. Negative times a positive is a negative. So negative 108. Now we do the same thing here. I have an 8 at the bottom. So I'm going to multiply by 8. Because that's how I make it become 1. Because I'm multiplying the top by 8. So I have an 8 at the top by 8 at the bottom. 8 over 8 is 1. And that leaves me with V. I can write 1V if I want to, but it's the same thing as just writing V. So V is isolated if you have a 1 next to it. So don't feel like you have to get rid of that. And that equals 2. So you can write it like that or like this. It is the same thing. So now we have a little fun. We put those two things we just did together. So let's put them together. 2x minus 10 equals 5. So I first add and subtract. I first add, or subtract. So the question is, which number do I need to add? Well, here is the x. And I want to isolate this x. So if we have to first add or subtract, and I am trying to get this letter on the left side by itself, do I even need to touch the 15? Not right now. The two things I need to move are going to be the negative 10 and then the 2. But which one do I move first? Well, which one is added or subtracted? The 10. So you move the one touching the letter last. So I do the opposite of minus 10, which is plus 10. Cancel, cancel. I'm left with 2x. Now, how do I get rid of the 2? Well, we divide, because that's multiplication. And I do this step last. So second, you are going to multiply or divide the number that is touching the letter. Now, you can also write, which I would prefer, the number that's multiplied by the letter, but I don't want to confuse you and I want to use some language I know you'll understand. So secondly, you want to multiply or divide by the number touching the letter. That's the last thing you do, okay? So now I have to look at number 10. I have to be careful. I'm going to rewrite it over here because it looks like I'm running out of room. Now here's my letter. Here's my letter. So that means I need to move the 20? No. No. Wherever the letter is, that's where you look for your numbers to move. I want to move either the 4 or the 12. The question is, which one? Now, do you remember? Move the number that's touching the letter last, because you have to add or subtract first. So I have to do the inverse operation, which means to do minus 12. So this is 8 equals 4x. But over here, Miss, you move the stuff from the left. and then you went to the right. So why are you going from the right to the left? That doesn't make sense. Don't you always go from the left to the right? No. You find the letter, and wherever the letter is, you move the stuff on that side. Okay, so now we are going to do the opposite, the inverse operation, the opposite of multiplication here, which is to divide. Now that's 1. I have to divide by 4 here. So now I get that x is 2. And yes, I can write it that way. And yes, x is isolated. And no, x doesn't have to be on the left side. Let's do number 11. Okay, so find your variable. There it is. How do I get rid of the numbers in the right order? What do I need to know? Do I touch that 5 sitting over there with no letter? I go where the letter is. It's on this side. So some people like to do this, and they like to draw a line. And let's do that. Maybe it'll help you. Now, I'm going to move everything over here to get the x by itself, to isolate the x. How do we do that? Well, here's 12, and here's minus 3x. So some people want to say, well, there's a subtraction, so don't I do plus 3x? No. Move the number by the letter last. Last. You do that last. So we have to move the 12 first. Now, do I say add 12 because there's a minus sign? No. That's plus a negative. And that negative belongs to that 3, not the 12. So what do? Oh, this is a positive 12. So I subtract 12. Gotcha, miss. Got it. And 5 minus 12 is negative 7. How do you know? Because if you draw 12 negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 5 positives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cancel, 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 cancel. What do you have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 negatives. That's why I got that. Now bring down my equal sign. I keep it lined up. Bring down my negative 3x. How do you get rid of negative 3? You divide, because it is multiply. So you divide it off the inverse operation. That is 1. Bring down my equal sign. Bring down my x. Can I write a 1 right there? Yes. Is it still isolated? Yes. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, I'll leave this one for you to practice at home. And on the back, I want to at least go through maybe 3 more and we'll call it quits. 13. How do I do number 13? Well, let me draw my line. Let me find my variable. My variable is x. What is a variable? It's a letter that represents a number. That is my variable. Okay, so I move the 1/3 or the minus 2. We always add or subtract, so it's going to be plus 2. Now I bring down my equal sign and my 1/3 x. How do I get rid of the 1/3? I multiply by 3. I multiply by 3. And why are we going to multiply by 3? Because this is 1 divided by 3. So times 3. Times 3. And that goes away and it becomes 1. So you can write 1x right here. Or you can just write x. It's the same thing. So I'm going to write the 1 because I know you see that 1 and you want to bring them down. Then that's okay. 8 times 3 is 24. Is x isolated? Yes, it is. Now, I want to show you one more way to do that problem. Because you can also say 1/3 x minus 2 equals 6. Plus 2, that's 8. Cancel, cancel. You could also say all of this divided by 1/3. All of this divided by 1/3. Because this is multiplied to x. Cancel, cancel. So x equals, now that's ugly, isn't it? You can use a calculator, or if you remember from 8th grade, 8 divided by 1/3, I think they used keep, change, flip. times 3 over 1. So 8 times 3 over 1 is 24. Same answer. If you wanted to use the calculator, you could. Control divide, 8, and then down here you type 1 divided by 3, and you still get 24. Okay? Let's do number 9, because I think that is worth practicing with that fraction in there. So I'm going to do minus 2, cancel, cancel, drum a line, sorry. That's 7, bring my equal, 1/5 x. Now how do I get rid of this? I have to multiply by 5 to get rid of that division. That's the inverse operation. Multiply by 5. So x is 35. Awesome. Let's do 15 and 16. I see like terms. So what do I want to do? Combine them first. And now you're going to divide by 10. X is 2. Over here, I see like terms. Draw my line. I see like terms. I have to put those together first. And what is that going to be? Negative 2x first. Now I get rid of the negative 2. X is negative 10. So now you have time to practice 17 and 18. You can also practice number 12 on the other side and see how you do. And then last but not least, I want to do at least number 19. So when you have a letter on each side, you have to first get the letter together. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to move minus 3x. Okay? Doesn't matter which one you move. Some people say move the smaller one. It doesn't matter. So that's 2x plus 6 equals negative 12. Now we do minus 6. That's negative 18. Then we divide by 2. So x is negative 9. Now, how do I know that this is right? Because you need to check your answer. This is called a solution. So how can I check my solution? I need to plug him back in. So 5 times negative 9 plus 6 equals 3 times negative 9 minus 12. If that is true, then this is the correct answer. So how do you check your solution? I'm going to cheat. Is it okay to cheat sometimes? Yeah. Well, no. No, you should never cheat. But I am going to use a calculator as a resource. So it's okay to use resources. Okay. So I get negative 39. And then 3, parentheses, negative 9, minus 12. And I get negative 39. So what does that mean? My answer was correct. Because that is how you check your solution. Good luck. I want you to try 17, 18, and 20. Don't forget to do number 12 on the other side. See you in class, guys.